In a burning village, a girl in Yakuta witnesses a rain of bombs dropped from planes. People are fleeing for their lives and the girl and her mother are both running for safety. Unfortunately, the mother is crushed by debris. A person's voice rings out girl and the girl is transported to the other world just before the flames can engulf her. In the present, on a sunny day, Satoru Mikami looks back on his life and what he hasn't accomplished yet. He had given up on trying to get a girlfriend and remark on his bachelor lifestyle. Later, Satoru hears his name being called by his work junior, Tamura. Tamura introduces his new fiancée, Miho Satari, to Satoru. While the three have a pleasant talk and are about to head to a nearby restaurant, Satoru is stabbed in the street by a random man with a knife. Luckily, Tamura and Miho were safe because Satoru had pushed them to safety. While blood was pouring out from Satoru, a mysterious voice can be heard, announcing the acquisition of a body that doesn't require blood as well as various abilities like Predator, Great Sage, and various resistances. The voice is only heard by Satoru, while the surrounding people remain oblivious. Satoru, using the last of his strength before death, requests that his PV data be destroyed. When Satoru awakens, he discovers that he has been reborn as a slime. With nothing else to do while coming to terms with their condition, Mikami eats hippocute herbs and collects magic ore. Eventually, after 3 months, Mikami's various abilities completely acclimated to their soul, allowing the percents inside Great Sage to make itself known for the first time. Overjoyed by their new companion, Mikami lets their guard down and falls into an underground lake. In an attempt to get out, the water current control and hydraulic propulsion skills are acquired. Mikami is quick to jet out of the water, only to find their body splattered all over a strange barrier. As it turns out, a mysterious and powerful presence lies within the barrier, and the two quickly take to conversing after Mikami learns the telepathy skill. The stranger teaches the blind slime how to see, through which Mikami finally confirms that they have indeed been turned into a slime, as well as learning the identity of the mysterious stranger, Veldora the Storm Dragon. 300 years ago, Veldora was trapped by the hero's infinity prison, and now he only expects to live for another 100 years before his dwindling magical power finally kills him. According to Veldora, Mikami is a unique existence in the world. Yes, there are other people who have been brought to this world, most of which were summoned against their will and due to various complications die off quickly. Some, like Mikami, die and get reincarnated, but usually as the same species and world they were in their past life. And of those, only Mikami has been reincarnated as a non-human, a slime. After some back and forth chatting, the slime and dragon agree to become friends. Meanwhile, back in the original world, Tamura fulfills Mikami's request and destroys his PV data by tossing the computer in a bathtub. He also intends to name his child after Mikami if he ever has one. Mikami and Veldora discuss the idea of leaving the cave. While the slime is free to go anytime they want, Veldora remains trapped. Towards that end, Mikami wants to use Predator to study the barrier and find a way of dismantling it using Great Sage. At a minimum, Mikami will contain Veldora's dwindling magic reserves and ensure that he doesn't fade away. Veldora agrees to the plan, but before they continue, he gives the slime the name Rimuru and asks the slime to come up with a last name for both of them, Tempest. Once the newly christened Rimuru Tempest eats the dragon and learns, to their disappointment, that they can no longer communicate with him. At the same time, various monsters and governments sense the dragon's disappearance and begin moving to investigate and take advantage. Rimuru eventually finds the way out of Veldora's cave thanks to a trio of adventurers sent to investigate Veldora's prison. Over the next month, Rimuru hunts and eats a variety of different monsters and steals their abilities, creating the Water Blade skill and conjuring to strip the cave of its resources. Finally, Rimuru finds their way out of the cave and eventually comes into contact with a group of goblins. The goblins explain that after the disappearance of their guardian deity, Veldora, various monsters have started moving into the forest trying to stake their claim. Among them, a group of direwolves have been encroaching on their village. The goblins, weak in body and armed with poor equipment, stand no chance against the wolves that both outnumber and outgun them. And so, witnessing the great power of Rimuru Tempest Aura, ask for their help. Rimuru, thinking briefly on their past life and inability to say no when pressured, agrees to help the goblins fend off the wolves. As the first step to helping the goblins fend off the Tempest wolves, Rimuru uses the hippocute grass potions they've been creating to heal all of the injured goblins, bringing their fighting forces back up to the near peak. Secondly, Rimuru has the goblins dismantle their homes and build fences that were then reinforced using the sticky and steel threads obtained from the black spider in the cave, building traps out of the nearly invisible thread. When the wolves arrive, they get caught in Rimuru's wire traps, while the goblins hit them with crude bows and arrows. The dire wolf boss is undeterred and charges in, getting caught up in Rimuru's wire trap. Rimuru gives the boss one chance to turn back and run, and when he refuses, Rimuru decapitates him using Water Blade. With the death of the enemy leader, Rimuru devours the former boss's corpse and takes on his form. In a new wolven form, Rimuru gives the surviving wolves the option of submission, retreating, or death. While it initially seems like the other wolves intend to keep fighting, they ultimately submit to Rimuru. The next morning, Rimuru, who realizes that they're now responsible for now not one but two groups of monsters, decides to take measures to make sure they get along. As a start, realizing that there are a nearly proportionate number of goblins and wolves, has them pair up and dubs them Goblin Riders. Then Rimuru encounters the second issue. None of them have names. Rimuru decides to come up with a name for each and every one of them for the sake of personal convenience. And, in the honor of the dead Rigger, his brother is similarly named Rigger, while the chief is named Riggard. When the time comes to name the wolves, in spite of the chief insisting that Rimuru takes a break, Rimuru simply takes their family name of Tempest and wolves' racial name of Fong, and dubs the new leader of the pack Ranga. Suddenly Rimuru's body collapses and enters a low-activity mode, with Great Sage informing them that too much magical power has been expended. When Rimuru awakens, they see an unfamiliar young lady watching over their body. Riggard, now in a much bigger and much stronger body in the form of a hobgoblin, comes in and explains that they've evolved thanks to Rimuru naming them. Likewise, Ranga comes in and explains that because of the name Rimuru gave him, they've evolved into Tempest Wolves, causing Rimuru to realize they've made a new problem. Because the goblins and wolves are bigger than before, their previous housing, feeding, and clothing methods are now need replanning. As a start, Rimuru assigns them into groups to hunt and gather food, thus averting one crisis for the time being. Consulting with Riggard, Rimuru decides that a party of goblin riders will accompany them to Dworgen in order to barter for assistance from the dwarves living there. As Rimuru and their party consisting of 5 Tempest Wolves, including Ranga, and 5 goblins including Rigger and Gobta, spend a few days traveling to the city of Dworgen, Rimuru questions the goblins on various topics. As a start, they ask Rigger about who named his brother Riggerai. According to Rigger, his brother was named by a passing lieutenant in a demon lord's army, a fact that makes Rimuru mildly concerned. Rimuru also questions Ranga to determine if he's holding a grudge for the death of his father. For Ranga, the subject of his father is not an issue. He holds no lingering feelings of loyalty compared to his gratitude for Rimuru sparing him and his pack's lives and even granting them names. Once the group arrives outside of Dworgen, Rimuru instructs most of the goblins and the wolves to stay back while entering the line with Gobta. Once in the line, Rimuru and Gobta are quickly harassed by a group of adventurers who see them as weak monsters and wish to mug them. Having already instructed the goblins and wolves not to attack humans unprovoked, Rimuru instructs Gobta to plug his ears and turn around. Rimuru assumes the form of the newly evolved former wolf chief and uses intimidation to try to scare the adventurers off. Met with overwhelming success, Rimuru terrorizes the other people in the lineup and is immediately captured by Dworgen's guards. Fortunately, Rimuru's story lines up with eyewitness reports, and since no one was hurt, the guard Captain Keita feels inclined to let them go after a bare minimum amount of time. At that time, one of the guards charges in and reports that a group of miners have been injured in an attack by an Armorsaurus, and that they have no spare potions to heal them. Rimuru chimes in and trades in a large amount of high-quality healing potion in exchange for freedom. Once the dwarves are healed, Keita agrees to take them to the best blacksmith that he knows. Keita takes Rimuru to his brother, Kaijin, who also turns out to be the boss of the 3 miners Rimuru healed. While the dwarf is grateful for the safe return of his employees, he is already in the middle of an order for the kingdom. Kaijin has to make 20 magic swords for the kingdom, and thanks to the work of a minister named Vesta, he has no time and no magic or to make them. Rimuru recalls their time in the cave and regurgitates refined or in the form of a chunk of magisteel. Rimuru requests the 1 magic sword that Kaijin has already produced and, after predating the sword, Rimuru uses Great Sage to manufacture 19 copies of the weapon made out of magic steel and regurgitates them, thereby completing Kaijin's order for him. In exchange, Rimuru explains their need of an architect to build the village and a craftsman to make clothes and weapons. Agreeing to Rimuru's terms, Kaijin takes him to a bar staffed entirely by alluring elven women, who weigh on the slime and 4 dwarfs hand and foot to celebrate. While still at the bar, one of the elves working there offers to tell Rimuru's fortune, showing them a person whom they are destined to meet. In the crystal ball, Rimuru is treated to a vision of a woman and 5 children, leading Rimuru to wonder who they are. Around the same time, a local minister, Vesta, pipes up and questions Kaijin on what he's doing there when he should be trying to complete his order. However, Kaijin explains that he already sent in all 20 of the long swords he was commissioned to complete, surprising the noble. Deciding to quickly change the topic, Vesta comments that he's more concerned that a lowly slime has been led into such a high-class establishment and makes his displeasure known by dumping a mug full of alcohol on Rimuru. Kaijin, thoroughly enraged by Vesta's disrespectful behavior, punches him clean out. Though Rimuru is initially concerned that this will cause trouble for Kaijin and the bar, Kaijin asks that Rimuru take him to their town to act as the artisan that Rimuru required. Unfortunately, Kaijin's brother, Keidu, is forced to arrest the group and keep them as a prisoner until their trial. Once inside of the prison again, Rimuru realizes that they left Gobta tied up in the cell, who is still asleep. Rimuru wakes the sleeping goblin and informs him that if he wants out of his silky prison, he will have to summon his Tempest Wolf and get himself out. Kaijin apologizes for his behavior and explains to Rimuru his history with Vesta. Originally, Kaijin explains he was a captain of one of 7 orders of royal knights under King Gazel Dwargo's command, with Vesta serving as his aide. Unfortunately, one day, the Magisoldier project they had been assigned to complete spectacularly malfunctioned as a result of Vesta's rush, and the blame was pushed onto Kaijin, who was forced to resign. Since then, Vesta constantly makes unreasonable demands of the dwarf smith and trying to get him into trouble. Despite that, Kaijin insists that Vesta isn't a bad person at heart and believes that he might get better if Kaijin leaves, which is another reason why the dwarf wants to go work for Rimuru. Likewise, the 3 brothers intend to follow Kaijin under Rimuru's employment. The next day the 5 are called into court and quickly realize their trial has been rigged. Since the 5 aren't allowed to speak unless spoken to, their lawyer speaks instead, who makes it quite clear that he has already drafted their confessions. Vesta, meanwhile, has dramatically exaggerated his injuries and collected eyewitness testimony stating that Kaijin and his accomplices attacked Vesta unprovoked while he was in the middle of a drink. Before the 5 can be sentenced, however, Gazel asks Kaijin if he ever intends to return to his employ, to which Kaijin says no. The 4 dwarves and singular slime are banished, never to return to the city. Alone with Vesta, the king questions him on if there's anything he would like to say to him before he is removed from his position as minister. Gazel reveals that he knew who really was responsible for the Magisoldier failure all along, but because of his high hopes for Vesta, he did not expose his lie. But now his antics have gone too far, with Gazel revealing the healing potions provided by Rimuru that are superior in ability to the ones that they can create, and now, because of Vesta, all of their ties have been cut off with that slime. Thus, a teary-eyed Vesta is thanked for his service, before being led out of the court never to return, his dream of one day being of use to the king utterly shattered. The brothers Kaijin and Keita have a heartfelt farewell while the king looks on. Gazel instructs his spy master to apprehend the lawyer before sending her to spy on Rimuru, acknowledging them as a threat on par with the likes of Veldora.